interesting topic today, and I want to encourage everybody here to like, to share, to spread the news about what we're doing here on Ask a Deal Lawyer and Certified Coach. But today we are going to ask the question, is it rigged? Is the system rigged? Is this system we have, and this specifically talking about the educational system, is it rigged so that the most privileged and most affluent have so much of a increased likelihood of getting into the best colleges that it's so unfair to everybody else?
Well, let's look at some of the evidence, counselor.
So as you probably have heard, it's streaming everywhere. Every news outlet, everything is talking about Operation Varsity Blues.
Yeah.
Varsity Blues. And it starts with the whole person behind all of it. His name is William Rick Singer. Mm-hmm. So William Rick Singer operated a nonprofit, and that nonprofit would help college able or ready kids to get into college.
Okay.
And his clients were some of the most affluent people we know of. Mm-hmm. Felicity Huffman, Lori Loughlin. I mean, these were actresses in Desperate Housewives, mm-hmm. and Full House.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Becky.
Lawyers in large law firms, private equity managers. Mm-hmm. I mean, it is people who are in the top 1%, but those were his clients.
Yes.
And so what he would do with these clients is that he would then work with their kids, or they would work with their kids in working with athletic departments at elite colleges, with also, I guess, the admissions office, mm-hmm. and everything else, and they would create, in many cases, fake profiles.
Wow. Well, so we have a lot of questions to unpack here today then. So part of this is going to come down to, well, I think you can't escape it, ethics. So we have the ethical behavior and the unethical behavior. We have a system that's in place that's designed to help several people get into school, which then you can bring in affirmative action, a few other things that people might cite.
Yeah.
But there is a system in place, and people are either going to act ethically towards it or non-ethically, or they're going to say, who cares? Who's going to pay attention? Who's going to know if I can take care of it in a way that's kind of slick? So these are some of the elements that we're looking at.
Well, so, and part of the elements, so this is the way that people have categorized this system, and William Singer himself, the sort of the author of all of it, he talks about this front door, this side door, and this back door. Okay, and so he says the front door is when people get into college on their own merit. Mm-hmm. And they perform well in school, they do extracurricular activities, or whatever it may be, and they apply and they get in because their SAT scores are great and everything else. Mm-hmm. Then he talks about this back door. And so the back door is where very wealthy people may make well-timed donations, mm-hmm. Or create well-timed endowments at the college, mm-hmm. and would influence maybe a college's admissions decisions. Mm-hmm. And so that's the back door.
Okay.
William Singer, he created what is now called the side door.
Is that like the side eye? Is it something like the side eye at all?
I mean, I can think of a lot of things with side on them and everything, but he calls it the side door. Mm. And the side door is just like this. It's a recorded conversation with he's the co-chair of one of the largest law firms mm-hmm. in the country. Mm-hmm. And so he says, so here's the first thing we need to do. And I mentioned this to your wife. Mm-hmm. We need to get your daughter tested for a learning difference. Here's why. If she gets tested for a learning difference, and let's say it's my person that does it, or whoever you want to do it, I need that person to get the 100% extended time over multiple days. So what this means is we'll have to show that there's some discrepancies in her learning, which there's got to be anyways. And if she gets 100% Gordon, then I own 2 schools. And so basically, he says that he'll give her unlimited time to take the test, and then also someone may come in and sit down and take the test for her.
Fraudulent? That's the first word that comes to mind. Well, I think when you think about this, you have to think of, is it criminal? And criminal means that there's some sort of victim in this case. And this isn't a victimless crime at all. Think about all the kids who probably didn't get in because these spots are taken by people who paid for the way to get in.
That's right.
So we've created now a problem. We've created a crime. There's a negative effect. We've created a victim now in this. And so all these kids who probably could get in or probably were better off but missed spots because he found a way to come in through a side door to miss them all together.
Well, so and then we get into the psychology. So why would a parent want to do something like that? Because is there an argument out there? Wait a minute, are there some other ways that people can get in that may take some other kid's spot? Affirmative action, legacy, legacies that schools use to bring people in.
Yes.
The whole system of admissions is fairly complex.
It is.
But there are different categories you can be in: geographical diversity, ethnic diversity, football player, athletic, all those kinds of things. So those are sort of well-founded ways in which we identify something sort of unique about somebody. It can be controversial, but it is something that is accepted and that it's known. We may need to work on it and everything, but do you think those types of programs would cause somebody to say, wait a minute, let me try to work the system in my own way?
I would say in this case, I think we have to look at why do people make a decision to do something like this. So a lot of times when you see good people, right?
Yeah.
These are good people. They just had a different idea of how they might wanted to work the system in a way to help them get ahead. And so a lot of times when you see people ethical people doing what eventually comes out as unethical things, it's not necessarily just because of the monetary result. That's a big part of it. A lot of times it's because they like the person that they're trying to help and see get there, right? So for example, parents they love their kids. They want to see that their kids are going to do well, and they're going to do everything they can to ensure that they do that, even if it means breaking the rules. So here's where we get into a bigger spot when we talk about psychology. Now what we're talking about is there's things in life that are quote unquote business decisions, and there are things in life that are ethical decisions, and those aren't the same thing. So a parent can make a business decision in terms of legacy to maybe shroud things in a certain way to help a kid get in.
Right.
Although it might not be ethical at the same time. And I think that's how we see these people showing up, especially these famous actresses doing the same thing. So they made a business decision.
Well, and so here's the reason why they got busted. Okay.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
So the reason why is. If we go back to the back door, that's an individual making a contribution to a university, sort of well-timed or whatever it may be, an endowment or whatever, and their kid applies in a couple years and they're sort of influencing the decision. That's all, it's controversial, but, it's a known way to do it. They created a nonprofit. And so there was a nonprofit that received donations, if you will, from these parents. And then that money from the nonprofit, once the nonprofit received the money, then paid off coaches, test takers, Photoshop experts, because there were kids who they put the head on another athletic body to make it look like the kid was more athletic than what he or she was and everything. And so, and then the parents, when they make those donations to this nonprofit, they then put it on their tax returns and said, this is a deduction I need to get for this donation I made that was used to have an expert test taker sit in the place of their own child. And so that's criminal.
Yeah, that's extremely criminal. So what we have there is a very strategic mind that understands how the game is played and understands the system, and then figures out a way to circumvent it. And so then you have to ask the question, well, I'm sure these people are good people before this. Like, if you ever look and see, what did they ever do before this? Did they ever fraud any other system? And maybe they hadn't. But when it comes to this one, they're all in. And I think it has a lot to do with...
So we have a comment here. Steve Fisher just commented here, and he said, people offered me money to take the LSAT and other tests for them. I didn't really have parents. So here's somebody who's an excellent test taker, and he could have been bribed, but he's not. Steve is an excellent ethical lawyer, Steve Fisher there and everything, but there are parents who are under the gun who really want the best for their children, and they might be willing to have someone do that.
That's right. Well, again, I think Steve then illustrates that he made an ethical decision there instead of a business decision. He could have made a business decision and say, I could take a bunch of people's LSATs for them, and I'll create ways that I could do it where I can't get caught, and then show up and have people come to me. And he could have made a lot of money just taking this for people. But he said, no, I'm not going to make a business decision. I'm going to make an ethical one, a moral one, and that is, I'm not going to be known for something like that because my ethics are higher than how I could basically see from a business standpoint.
Well, and check this out. So we were just talking about, so Elohiel just said, this is far more interesting than the Jussie Smollett conversation. This conversation right here. And so I think that's interesting because is there in any way how this could be related? Jussie Smollett, Michael Jackson, these allegations there,
They are related because again, the ethics touches everything. Everything you do could be bound based off of a system, ethical or not. And then the ethics, then you have to argue about what is morals. What would be somebody's morals? What are you getting it from? Are you getting it from a book? Are you getting it from a community or a collective? Or where are you getting your morals from? So yeah, this is because for Jussie Smollett, he had to make either a business decision or a ethical decision. He chose the business decision. For an actor, the more you stay in the limelight, the more people can think about you for parts and roles and other things. Plus, we know there was a record coming out, and plus we know he had Lee Child, someone who's in Hollywood, has some stroke, has some power. That was a business decision to say, if I can get with him and have him help me, if that's the case, and we'll find out what comes out. You see, what Jussie did is he made a business decision on something that should have been ethical. And I know that's a lot.
That's a lot. And so,
that's the link. If you're wondering what is the link between all of that, somewhere in there a business decision was made.
Okay. I might go back to that because I think it's worth exploring. But So I agree there is a similarity here, and a lot of it I think also has to deal with entitlement. This sort of entitlement mentality that makes someone believe I deserve to get more money. My child deserves to be in the most elite school no matter what. And these other people who get in because of race or legacy or whatever, you know what? Well, I know how to get in as well. I'm crafty enough and I got this side door. And so, and then what stops that thinking? When do you say, okay, I'm going to stop right here? Because when in some of these interviews and some of these recorded conversations, some of the parents were like, "Wow, that's kind of stretching it," and they're like, "No, everybody's doing it and everything," and they just go ahead and keep going further with it.
Well, I love that you brought that up. So think about this, and I'll use movies, right? So movies need a good villain. If there's not a good villain, then the hero doesn't really have a whole lot to overcome. Also understand that in movies, when you're writing and directing, the best villains are the ones who think they're actually doing something right. They actually think they're doing something good. So if we were to take Black Panther, for example, and we look at Killmonger, he doesn't think he's doing anything wrong by saying, I want to help the oppressed rise up and fight back against the oppressors using the weapons that he was able to get from Wakanda, right? He wasn't thinking that killing other people who oppressed him was wrong. He was thinking that, no, this is actually right. This is vindication. So part of this is that we don't understand psychology. We don't understand people. We think that people can say, oh, well, that's not right. I shouldn't do that. But again, when it comes to thinking, people are split. And they will say, well, what's good for the business? What's good for me to stay around? I've got to have to stick around. And then, of course, then there's the ethical. So in this situation, when you see somebody doing this, they probably don't see themselves as Killmonger. They don't see themselves as Hitler. They don't see themselves as the villain. What they see is somebody who's actually said, I'm smart enough to figure out a way so that I can continue pushing on my legacy.
Really? Sometimes, I always wonder, some of these wiretap conversations, somebody surely got to know they're doing something wrong here. So the wife of the CEO of Hercules Capital in Palo Alto, they take the conversation, and so it says, so I just want to make sure that you and I are on the same page in case they were to call. And so the wife says, so what's the story? And so and he says, so the story is essentially that you gave money to our foundation to help undeserved kids. And then she is saying, well, does that make any sense? Because we're not really doing that. But she said, okay, fine. Let's do it to help undeserving kids. When in fact, she knew exactly what the money was for, and they were just it was fraudulent.
Yes. So again, this goes right back to think about the people that help people do bad things. They're not doing it because, hey, I also believe this is a bad thing. They're doing it because the person that's spearheading this whole thing, they like that person. And so, for example, I'll give you a perfect example of this. So there was a guy, Toby Groves. I don't know if people remember him. He ran the biggest financial scheme ever, other than the Ponzi scheme. And this was $7 million to the tune of what he frauded people out of. Now, here's what you need to understand about Toby Groves. He had a brother who also was sentenced by the same judge for also fraud. Now, they had a father, and the father was upset that the younger brother did this. The older brother, Toby Grove, said, I will never do that, Father. I will never destroy our family name by fraud, because we already have a brother that did that.
Right.
Well,
right.
22 years later, guess what Toby does? Now, he doesn't do it because he's trying to be a villain. What he realizes is his business isn't making the money that it needs to, the mortgage business, so he starts to lie. He reframes his situation. You wonder, how do people do this psychology-wise? Yeah. You reframe the situation. This isn't bad if this saves my business. So what would I do to save my business? Do I have to lie and falsify? So then what did he do? He called in some of his employees and he said, hey, this is what happened. One-on-one, he told them straight up, if you don't want to do this, you don't have to. But if you want to do this, this is how we can save the business. And no one told him no. They helped him. So again, it's not just a financial thing. There's a thing where if you're likable and liked, and then you look like you're reframing the problem, people want to help, and they'll actually help you do the thing.
Well, and apparently this guy was all the rave in Manhattan and in Palo Alto and all these sort of exclusive areas where everybody, the men and women, wives or whatever, friends were saying, hey, we know this guy. He's awesome. Yes. He'll get your kid in. I mean, we're talking millions and millions of dollars. But can I just read another example here?
Please.
So here's another one right here. Wiretap conversation. It says, I have to do a profile for him in a sport, which is fine. I'll create it. I just need him. I'll pick a sport and we'll do a picture of him, or we'll put his face on the picture, whatever, just so he plays whatever. Hey, I've already done that 1,000,000 times. Mm-hmm. And then he says, well, we have images of him in lacrosse. I don't know if that matters. They don't have a lacrosse team. But as long as I can see him doing something, that would be fine. Mm-hmm. And so they Photoshop his face on another kid. But part of this is, this stuff was submitted to admissions offices.
Mm-hmm. 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 And again, you see the collusion here that's going on. Once people decide, they have to frame it first, because nobody wants to do something for an out-and-out lie. They got to believe that there has to be some inherent good somewhere in there. Yeah. So here they were just like, let me rationalize it. Let me push the goalpost back a little bit, and I can rationalize. If I can find any little bit of good out of it, then they tell themselves, that's what I'll say if I ever get blown up. I'll say, hey, that was never my intention, was to do this. I did this because I really thought I was helping X, Y, and Z. And that's what you'll hear a little.
Well, and being a parent, mm-hmm. and so I think that you often are in situations where you love your children so much that you're willing to do almost anything for them. Mm-hmm. And there's the protector in you that you automatically are going to protect them.
Correct.
And then you're also going to try to do your best to help them advance.
That's right.
Normal parents. There are some parents who don't do that. So, and there's always in your mind at times, like, if someone did this to my child, I will do this to them, Mm-hmm. If an R. Kelly kind of thing or whatever, or if alleged whatever happened, I mean, like, I would lose my mind. And so I would hate to be put in that situation to figure out what I would do. Mm-hmm. But then normally, like your kid with colleges and stuff like that or whatever, you Absolutely. Want the best for them. That's You're trying to work your networks and do those kinds of things, whatever. Mm-hmm. And so it's a tough line, to kind of keep, control over mm-hmm. as a parent, mm-hmm. to make sure that you don't cross the line, mm-hmm. But every parent has to go through it and think through it.
Well, all right, and so I think that's I love that you set me up with that. So let's look at business decision, and an ethical decision. So a business decision says, and you know this, right? We all know this because we're in business. First of all, what might I gain? That's the first thing you're going to do with the business decision mindset. Second of all, how will it affect my future? Because if I can replicate this and it makes me rich in the future, then that's awesome. I want to keep doing it. Or if it makes me prosperous. Now that's business decision. It has nothing to do with ethics. The ethical decision starts with not what might I gain. It starts with, is this fair? That's the ethical one. And the second thing to ethical based decisions is, will people be hurt?
So you know what? This reminds me. This reminds me of that Key and Peele episode where they're in the plane. I don't know if you saw that one. And the guy wants to go to the restroom, and then the flight attendant comes over and says, "No, you need to sit down." And then he says, "But is it legal? Like, is it legal? Can I go back there and go to the bathroom? I know you're saying this stuff on the intercom, going to sit down, but is there a law against it and everything? Is it legal?" And so, as a lawyer, obviously, we advise our clients and let them know, is it legal? And we will tell our clients, this is not legal. These are the rules or whatever. And we also tell them, these are also the consequences of what you may do or whatever else and everything. We never advise our clients to do anything illegal. We explain what the law is and everything.
Absolutely.
And so the ethics is very, very important as well, because it's about, I think, morality, right, wrong, and everything else. And you need to be, but then there's a whole nother also aspect of it as well, is it in fact illegal? And I like to also, I think ethics is extremely important. And I think obviously if something is illegal, that's a huge issue. And that's the difference here in the front door, side door, back door situation here.
I like that.
This side door that they're using is illegal.
Yes. And we do have a question. We have a question from Lauren. Lauren says, do you guys feel people have gotten really soft nowadays, more sensitive?
Sensitive. And so in relation to like maybe this issue here, so I know people who are outraged at the fact that the news has been coming out about this whole Operation Varsity Blues. They're saying, how could people just dupe and just abuse the system, and then also the way it's being done in some cases, claiming that these kids they're given to help underserved kids and everything. How could anybody do that?
Right.
But is that being ultra sensitive? When people are outraged by that, or are parents being oversensitive and being too emotional, not thinking clearly, and trying to push to get their child in and do anything to do it?
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I think the more something is reported on, the more something is talked about, the more we keep looking at it, the more you're going to get an opinion one way or the other of it. And then if you get an opinion of it, especially if it's something you see happening a lot, if you turn on the TV every day and one day it's Jesse Small, the next day it's R. Kelly, the next day it's Michael Jackson. Then it's these folks that you thought, hey, well, they're not entertainers or whatever. These are people we trusted with emissions, and they're doing these sort of things. I think all this reporting helps create a sense, if you will, of look at my world, what's going on? And I think that will heighten your response to how things are happening. But I also think that we shouldn't be surprised that good people can still do bad things.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. And rich people can do bad
things. And if you bought into the idea that just because we're in America and we're making good money and things are going well, that somehow that means we, as a people, we've climbed that last hill, I would say you've read the wrong reports. You have to be aware every day that anybody, anytime, anywhere is making a choice, and that choice is either going to be a business decision, or ethical decision, or they just won't make a decision at all.
Well, but here's the big deal. Here's the thing.
Yes.
With all the wrongdoing and everything.
Yes.
How does it play out in our justice system?
See, that is a big deal.
And so we go to Justice Smollett with 15, 17 page, account indictment or whatever on him and everything.
Yes.
And then we have the guy, the Trump administration that just got sentenced for basically 46 months or something like that, who basically committed treason.
Yes.
And then we have this elite group of people here, 1% privileged group, who are now being charged, and that's great. but what are they going to do any time? What's going to happen to them? And are they going to be able to hire the best lawyers that money can buy and be able to defend themselves in such a way where maybe they don't get the same, penalized the same as someone else, and maybe with a crime that maybe, that's also a big issue here.
Yes, it is. I think it's very multifaceted. There are several different angles, and I think it's going to come down to which way you like to think. What's your mentality in? Are you in the survival mode, which means you can pretty much cut other people out? You don't care. It's about you surviving. Or are you in that mode that says, no, we're better together, and I have to start treating people like the type of person I keep telling people that I am, versus saying it on one end and then acting a completely different way on the back end, which is to cut your heart out. So, or swimming with the sharks. I mean, do you ever wonder why we have more books on self-help in any of the bookstores than we do almost at the
I love self-help books, yeah.
Right?
And I've got one.
And look at right, because there's a focus on self. There is a lens. Everybody has a lens through which they're looking through the world, but the difference is, what do we agree upon as morals? What do we agree upon as ethics? Right? And what we find here is that some people might say, well, y'all are too stringent with the way y'all want to look at it. And they're going, I'm a little bit, to Lawrence, I'm a little softer on that. To me, that's not as big of a deal. If a person wants to do that, well, who cares what they do in their house, in their bedroom, and this sort of thing. And it's like, okay, but now we're starting to see how that stratifies out and becomes other issues for people. So if you have a loose mindset, if we say about sex, look at most of these cases. They're sex-oriented cases. Right? So that's a whole nother story. But again, wouldn't you expect that to happen if we're saying everybody should just do whatever they want, whenever they want to do it, however they want to do it? You should run into allegations and things like this happening. This should happen, right?
Yeah.
So then it's about, well, what do we do now as a people? What is it that we're putting out there? What is it that we're saying that we lead with? Do we lead with a business mindset, or do we lead with an ethic mindset while doing business? And I think that's the big question we'll constantly keep asking.
Well, and I think you can do both. I mean, like,
Of course you can.
as a business owner, you obviously are trying to drive profit, and also
Absolutely.
the mission of the business. At the same time, as a business owner and leader of the organization, you have to also be thinking about, what is our legacy? What are we doing out there?
That's right.
Are we doing? Is this ethical? Is this right? And so, that is a thought process you have to go through on a daily basis.
Yes.
And it also requires checks and balances and
Correct.
accountability.
Yes.
And please check yourself before you get checked. And so that's a really important thing to kind of always be analyzing. Wait a minute, what are we doing here? Okay, let's try to do this. Let's change this or whatever. We don't want to go down this slippery slope. And so, hey, it's very important. Hey guys, we're almost finishing up, but I want you to we want you to share.
Absolutely.
I want you to tell your friends about it and
Where can
everything.
they find you, Steve?
Well, you can find me here on Instagram, Steve Bolden, Bold Creations. Also on Facebook, it's Steve Bolden and the Boss Negotiator School. And I've got a YouTube channel
yes.
now called Bold Creations Holding
Go
Company.
subscribe, folks.
Yes, please subscribe. We need subscribers there, and there's a lot of content on there too.
Absolutely. And same thing with me. So again, you can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Facebook under my name, PJ Dunn. You can also find me on YouTube. I have a channel, PJ Dunn TV. It's after my name, so it's even easier. So a lot of the content that you see that Steve's posting up, I'm posting up. He's using the legal side of it. He'll share a lot about that with you on there, and I'll go ahead and show you from the behavioral side. So, but subscribe to both. You'll need them both. And then after that, we'll never have enough time to talk about all these things, but we appreciate the fact that you guys will sit down with us and your comments. And by the way, comment more. Let us know what you think about these things, right? Because
Yeah. And I know Elohio was saying something. There was one other thing he said over here. He likes ethics and honesty need to be talked about more in our society. And that's what we're sort of trying to do here. Not sort of, we are trying to do. We're doing it. We're addressing, issues that are hitting the mainstream that people are talking about, but trying to take a look at it from a lens of, ethics, also race, gender, all those kinds of things, and try to, help people or help us try to move forward in a positive direction.
I would agree. And I would say that at some point, this last word here, I would say, let's be a group of people, let's be a nation, let's be a country, let's be a universe, if you will, if we have to go that far, that says, my integrity is the thing that's the most profitable, and therefore I will do that every day.
That is a great ending right there. Appreciate that nugget, PJ. All right. Hey, y'all. So like, share, tell your friends about it. Put your comments in and everything. We'll be responding back to you.